because you want to speak about the environmental issue?
Well, as I said, because, by meeting with these people about this documentary and then going through it and then collecting all the information and seeing how terrible it was, and then, of course, not, as I said, not doing the documentary, and then saying, well, let's take all those facts and let's put it into a theatrical experience with characters and behavior and storytelling and still carry this information. I don't think it bogs the movie down. As I said, I think it enhances it in some ways. But that way, I think you can carry it all together. So, you can watch a movie and get caught up in the characters, you have some moments, you get scared or to laugh. And afterwards, if there are things that you want to talk about it, hey, great, as opposed to it's not about anything. So I don't want the piece to get lost in what is trying to be said as a message. It is just part of the piece.
Go home and Google search images of isopods. It is revolting. Yes, in the back, right here.
Speaking of isopods, thank you. Just wondering if you could tell us a bit about how you created the isopods. Was that like this kind of app? Does that
How do we create the isopod?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are for real. So what we're trying to do is we have to do some CGI work, like coming out of the fish's mouth and going up the guy's arm. That we have to CGI it. Oddly enough, in the very beginning, when the oceanographer is holding up the tweezer and said, this is, an isopod, it's sometimes referred to as sea lice. Those were real. Because we were shooting in South Carolina, and when the fish that we caught actually had isopods or sea lice on them. So that's fairly common in the sea lice version of it. They do continue to evolve. And so those were actually real, and the others we have to do CGI work to create that. The which one?
Real.
No, the 2-foot one is for real. That is an actual photo taken from, I don't know, off of Google search. I mean, that 2 feet. That we didn't have that in the film, but we show the range of the isopod family.
Mr. Levinson, was the fact that you were using so many different formats, was that an editorial nightmare, and how did you deal with that?
No, actually, to be honest with you, as complicated as it may seem, it was fairly simple. I think we had very good organization, that everything had to be downloaded, throughout the day, and then everything had to line up in terms of its digital thing, so it all can feed into an Avid, so that you can do it. Or I don't think we use an Avid. I think we were using what were we using, Jason?
Final Cut.
Final Cut. Yeah. So we did it on Final Cut. And so we had to set up, that we take the chip and then we would download it and translate it, so everything would have a consistency to it. Yes.
I just want to ask you, I can see how digital formatting would be useful for this film, but what are your other choices? Are you team digital, or are you team 35 mil, and where do you stand in the future of filmmaking?
Where do I stand in the future of filmmaking in terms of digital versus film?
Yeah.
Well, I think what's going to happen in the next few years, everything will be digital. I think it'll be a rare case when, black and white. I was going to say, when black and white used to be a form and then all of a sudden it disappeared, like we can only watch, color. I mean, there used to be, when I was a kid, there were black and white movies and color movies. And we went, okay. We didn't go, why is that in black and white? And why is that in Technicolor? And certain movies seem better in black and white. But in the end, it died out. And I think because of the transition that's taking place in a digital world, I think everything will become digital in the future.
And yes.
Within the movie, what would be the result of all this footage? Like, they would put it online, did they recover it, would they try to shut it down, or would this, what is the future of the movie?
Where would the movie go after?
Yeah, after, like she says, sign off.
Sign off. Where did it go?
Yeah.
Probably in today's world, it would have probably gone on to, one of the online services, played in parts on YouTube, etc. 10-minute segments.
I've
Yes.
seen
lots of bad horror movies. How did you move so flawlessly and do like a really, really good horror movie?
Repeat the question. It's like you said, you've seen so many bad horror movies. How did you move so fluidly and make such a good horror movie?
I don't know. I mean, you just follow, what your instincts are and how people should behave and how the camera should work. I mean, one of the logistical issues about the movie is you can't do a two-shot, an over-the-shoulder, a tighter single. You can't do that. You don't have. That's not the tools you're working with, because you say, well, how come they're on this angle and this angle and this angle? So most of the time it's a particular camera. So that if you want to show more, you have to figure out how to choreograph the scene. So like the young couple on the boat, he's videoing her, and then she sort of is in a two-shot, and then she takes the camera away from him, and then he goes into the water. So that's the only way to show it, is to figure out how do you choreograph it. Or the young couple, the young kids by the pier, that he's videoing her. She takes the camera from him. He's wandering down to the pier. Now we see him. Then as she's going onto the pier, he takes the camera back and then jumps into the water, and then he jumps in with the camera, and then the camera falls away, and it grabs these extra shots. That's the only way you can do the scene. So you have to figure, well, how do I make this work? And you say, okay, well, I have a surveillance camera, I can use that. How do I do these other shots? Because you do have to you have to be credible within your form. And so that's a kind of a design you got to figure out in your head. How do I actually shoot this scene without coverage? So if you would take, like, the police, coming to the 911, it starts 5 blocks away in a police car responding. And then you're following it down streets and things, and they pull up, and they get out, they walk back into the front of the car, and now they're having a conversation with the sheriff. It's all one shot. So it's a kind of, you have to figure it out.
And one last question here, yes.
With Homicide, you managed to bring exceptional handheld photography to the world, and obviously first Dogma and all that stuff. With this, you're just showing that found footage films have actually been shot with an intelligence that a director rarely brings to them. I'm wondering if there's part of you, though, that wants for a future project to just go back and crane shots of giant dollies and just make an old school, old-fashioned, glossy movie.
Yes.
For your next project, we could just discuss whether the limitations of digital and handheld shaky stuff, you just want to sometimes just PGW.
Well, look, every project that you do has a design to it. So you have to find what works for, say, that, you might say an old-time form of a certain kind of way of filming. So I think every film speaks as to how to approach it. And so this one needed to be this ragged thing of you're running around with your camera trying to do it, and it doesn't have real good composition, and you try to do